Hi everyone, this week we're going to be taking a quick look at my trip to Vintage Computer Festival Midwest, and then we're going to be tearing apart the Commodore 64 that I picked up. This is just some of the crowd. It looks busy, but it was actually busier than this. It was pretty crazy, but definitely a good time. It was a 30-hour round trip for us, but definitely worth it. Not everybody's stuff was working. This guy was trying to get one of his teletype, I believe, working. Of course, we had to go over to LGR's table. Couldn't get to him because of the line just yet, but we did get to see the Oddware Tower, the Barabyte, and of course the 486. This guy had the best display of IBM palm tops that I've ever seen. He ended up making his own custom screens for them and just had a great collection. This is the line waiting outside. We got there early and it just kept filling in. The line's cleared and we get to meet LGR. Here's a picture with myself, my wife, and LGR. Here's a robot just kind of hanging out. Not really doing anything, but he looked pretty cool. And a full Atari console set up into a kiosk. And here is a Nintendo Famicom from Japan. Kind of like the NES here. And the Barabyte PC. Definitely worth going to see. Not as creepy in person. And we get to meet Crazy Ken. And this is Krusty. Buried, burned, all sorts of terrible things happened to it. This is the gentleman that I won the Mac you'll see later in the video. Eric from Eric's Edge Videos, there it is, and buckled in for safety for the 15-hour ride home. Did test it, it did survive luckily, but of course I had to get the Commodore 64 up and running the second we got home. Probably about midnight, 1 a.m. here, and the cat's very interested. I just wanted to make sure it survived the ride and see what components we really got. And it did survive the ride. Once we started playing around with it, I realized the spacebar was pretty terrible. A couple of the keys weren't really responsive, so I figured first thing we need to do is tear it apart and clean the keyboard, clean the contacts. And it kind of needed a cleaning anyways. It was pretty gunky on the physical keycaps themselves. So we'll go ahead and tear it apart. Get the keyboard disconnected and the power LED disconnected. Motherboard really doesn't look to be in bad shape. It's a little bit dusty, but nothing looks blown up. Doesn't look like any water damage or anything, so I'm glad I picked this up. Definitely a good console. We're going to start with removing the screws to take the keyboard out of the faceplate. Once we get that out, we'll need to take out the screws that hold the PCB onto the keyboard mechanism itself so that we can clean the contact points. I think they were what's causing the issue because they're just probably dirty after all these years of use. So once we get those clean, hopefully the spacebar will be working well again. And now we have the keyboard freed from the faceplate. No damage. This survived the ride home as well. I just kind of had it in a cardboard box in the trunk, so good to see that there's no cracks on the case. We'll go ahead and get the PCB removed. We're going to take out all of the screws, and we do need to desolder the shift lock button. It's the only button that's soldered in place because it physically locks down when you click it on. It's not like our current caps locks where it's just software. This one physically locks the button down. So we'll just desolder the two legs, leave the solder in place, it's not hurting anything, and then we can remove the PCB from the keyboard. One last screw and we will have it free from the case. Let's get a look at it. So it doesn't actually look too bad, but we're going to go ahead and give it a clean with some isopropyl alcohol. Clean each contact with a Q-tip, and then I'm just going to wipe the entire board down just to make sure there's no residual gunk that I pushed around with the Q-tip left anywhere on the board to get back into those contacts. I did check it over and inspect for damage, make sure none of the traces were peeling off the board, that there wasn't any trace rot anywhere. Everything looked to be in great shape, so we're just going to give it a quick cleanup. And then we'll move on to cleaning the back of the keys or the plungers. And what those do is go down and contact the 2 points, short them out, and tell the computer that you are pressing the key. We're just going to give them a quick clean just to make sure that there's no issues. They don't look dirty again, just a good idea to get any residue or anything that's left over on them. So we're just going to put some alcohol on a Q-tip and clean each one. It takes quite a while, but in the end, it's worth not having to take this apart again if this ended up being the issue. So we'll just get through cleaning each one of these. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Tons of fun. And as I'm going around, I'm just going to make sure that the plastic itself is clean, more just for sanitary reasons. It's not going to hurt anything if the plastic is dirty, but We'll just give any spots that have any dust or residue left on them a quick cleaning, and then we'll go ahead and start removing the keycaps. I, like an idiot, decided to start pulling them off before putting it back together. So the plungers fell out the back, and that's when I realized the best way to do this: put the PCB back in place, put the screws in, and then the plungers won't fall out when you're removing the keycaps from the other side. Then we can remove all of the keys one by one, give them a good cleaning individually, clean behind them, and then move on from there without the plungers falling out and having to have them fall on the floor, track them down. It just makes a big mess. So we'll get the shift lock key soldered back into place, just the two legs, very easy to solder. Any cheap soldering iron can do that. And then we'll go ahead and get the keycaps removed. I started removing them by hand, thinking, oh, I won't need the keycap puller, this is old and it'll be easy to remove. And then shortly into it, I realized this is going to be much faster if I just go find the keycap puller. So I went digging, found it, and the rest of the caps came off a lot easier. They just slip it over, it looks like a piece of wire, it's just a piece of metal, and each keycap will come off. Here's a screw that I thought I lost and found it. Now it's back in place before I lose it again. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of these keys removed, and then we can see just how gross this board is. It doesn't look that bad with the light on it right now, but as you see each key come off, you can just see the mounds of dirt behind it. This is something I plan on keeping. Even if I were selling it, I'd probably be cleaning it like this, but if I'm going to have it in my house, it can't be this gross. It needs to be cleaned up. So we'll take the time, keep the springs, make sure we don't lose any of those, because I don't have any spare parts. This is the first Commodore 64 I've had, and we do need to keep the spacebar spring separate from the rest. The shift lock key has a spring that stays in place, so that's not going to come off. That will stay on the board. And then we'll just spray the whole thing down with glass cleaner and give it a good wipe down. You can see it gets cleaner every wipe. I ended up going over it 2 or 3 times because it was pretty gross, but you can see the end result is definitely worth it. While I'm boring myself scrubbing away here, you can see that there's a power supply up to the left above the soldering iron. So I did go ahead and buy a brand new power supply for this. It came with 3, but the gentleman that sold it to me was nice enough to let me know, because I had no clue about these, that the old power supplies can overvolt the system, and it will actually kill off the chips one by one as you continue to use it. So I, of course, like an idiot, plugged the first one in because I had to know that it worked, and it didn't turn on. I thought I fried the system, put it away, checked again and again, and after getting to the 3rd CPU, I figured I should get out the voltage meter and check. I finally found one that was close to specs but still high on the voltage, so I plugged it in, got it tested, and then put it away and waited for the new power supply to come. It's about $50 to $60. There's some better ones with screens, but I didn't really need that. But it is a reliable power supply that won't fail as the old ones did. They're not really worth rebuilding. I did look into it because I figured it'd be worth trying, but everything's held in place with a very heavy glue, so it's just not worth the effort to rebuild those. So we'll go ahead and give this one last wipe down, get the last little bit of gunk out of there, and then go ahead and get started wiping down each and every individual key. It does take time. Put on some music, just relax, because it's going to take a while. Washing them in the sink isn't faster because the time to dry just makes it even longer. So make sure you wipe all 5 sides of each key, pour yourself to death, and then they will be clean. Even though I just used glass cleaner on these, I did still give them a little bit of time just to air dry to make sure I wasn't putting them back wet in case any got into the plunger holes. And then we'll go ahead and get all the springs put back on. It's much faster this way, for me at least, to just have the springs all ready and then put the keys on in the correct order. I've never had one of these. It's not a common keyboard setup, so I did have to cheat and pull up a picture of a Commodore 64 because I forgot to take one before. So I have a laptop sitting on top of that monitor with a picture of the keyboard so that I know where the keys go. F keys are easy. The function keys obviously only can go in one place. And then we'll just get the rest popped on, get this back together, and hopefully it works now. The keys just push right into place. They're all very easy. The only one I had a little bit of trouble with was the space bar, because it's so long and it has the metal retaining clip on it. Was a little weird to go back on, but it did go into place and it pushes normally. I didn't lubricate any of the plungers. I didn't really wipe down the springs because they seemed clean enough. There was no dust on them because they're hidden pretty well by the keys once they're installed. So just went ahead, kept pushing these all on. It takes quite a bit of time. And then the only thing I did lubricate was the space bar, just to make sure that it was pushing down normally. I just used some lithium white grease. You can get it at any parts store. Just a little bit will do. I actually ended up using way too much and having to wipe it off a couple times just because it came out too fast. But a little bit will do you. And then once we finally get this snapped into place, it does feel normal and pushes down evenly no matter where you push the space bar. Before, it seemed to push okay, but you had to really push and almost hold it down to get the contacts to function. So hopefully with this cleaning and lubrication, we'll have a working keyboard again. A little more wrestling with the space bar. Like I said, it didn't want to go into place. I just didn't want to break it because, like I said, I don't have spare parts. So just kept playing around with it, and once I finally got it, every key feels normal. Give them a quick test before I put this back together. And now it looks good, it feels good, and it's not disgusting anymore. We're going to go ahead and give the outer case a quick cleanup. Use some cleaning wipes as well as some glass cleaner. Tried to get in all the little ridges because they really hold a lot of dirt. This wasn't too dirty, but definitely worth cleaning. You can see it doesn't look bad, and it doesn't really look that much better, but a lot of dirt came off while I was cleaning it. The ridges or indents up on the top where it says Commodore 64 and around the sides, just the style of the machine, they were a little bit harder to clean with a towel, so I ended up using an old paintbrush and some glass cleaner just so that it could dig in there a little bit better without damaging it. Wasn't really that dirty, but you could definitely see that they were clearer once I'd brushed through them, and worth spending the extra couple minutes of time just to make sure that this is clean and something that you don't mind having in your house. So now that this is clean, we'll go ahead and get the keyboard reinstalled into the chassis. Just a few screws to install. Luckily these are old, they're very serviceable. It's just a Phillips head, no special screws, no security bits, nothing crazy, no hidden screws, no clips to break. So we'll go ahead, get these screws installed and get this set back over the bottom half of the chassis. But first we're going to give that just a quick dusting and be sure that it's clean. The motherboard itself wasn't that dirty, no corrosion noticed, so I just took the same brush and just gave a quick wipe over it and blew it off with some air. I'm probably going to take this apart further in the future. May end up recapping it, I'm not really sure yet. But for now, I just want to see that it is functioning and get to using it. It's definitely a machine that I want to keep and use, learn how to use. Let's get it plugged in and tested. It turns on, we did good, and looks like all the keys are functioning. Especially the space bar, you can push it like a normal keyboard now and not have any issues. So all that's left to do now is put the last 3 screws in that hold the chassis together and learn how to use a Commodore 64. This is something I plan on doing more videos on. It came with a bunch of accessories. I have a floppy drive. It even came with a printer and a tape deck, so definitely some things I'd like to explore in the future. But for now, I'm just excited that it is functional so I can get to using it and learn how it works. This is the Mac SE that I won from Eric's Edge during his talk on HyperCard at VCF Midwest. Definitely a great machine. You will see this in upcoming videos. I just wanted to make sure that it survived the ride home. Was buckled in for safety, but you never know. And up here we have the view that we had in Chicago. Thank you for watching.